several former employees have claimed that your company was a hostile workplace for women. When you were confronted about it, you admitted making sexually suggestive remarks, saying, quote, "That's the way I grew up." In a lawsuit in the 1990s, according to the Washington Post, one former female employee alleged that you said, quote, "I would do you in a second." Should Democrats expect better from their nominee?
Let me say a couple things, and if I can have my full minute and a quarter, thank you. I have no tolerance for the kind of behavior that the Me Too movement has exposed. And anybody that does anything wrong in our company, we investigate it, and if it's appropriate, they're gone that day. But let me tell you what I do in my company and my foundation and in city government when I was there. In my foundation, the person that runs it's a woman. 70% of the people there are women. In my company, lots and lots of women have big responsibilities. They get paid exactly the same as men. And in my in City Hall, the top person, my deputy mayor, was a woman, and 40% of our commissioners were women. I am very proud of the fact that about 2 weeks ago, we were awarded. We were voted the the best place to work, second best place in America. If that doesn't say something about our employees and how happy they are, I don't know what does.
Senator Warren, you've been critical of Mayor Bloomberg on this issue.
Yes, I have, and I hope you heard what his defense was. I've been nice to some women. That just doesn't cut it. The mayor has to stand on his record, and what we need to know is exactly what's lurking out there. He has gotten some number of women, dozens, who knows, to sign non-disclosure agreements, both for sexual harassment and for gender discrimination in the workplace. So, Mr. Mayor, are you willing to release all of those women from those non-disclosure agreements so we can hear their side of the story?
We have a very few non-disclosure agreements.
How many is that?
Let me finish.
How many is that?
None of them accuse me of doing anything other than maybe they didn't like a joke I told. And let me just put, there's agreements between two parties that wanted to keep it quiet, and that's up to them. They signed those agreements, and we'll live with it.
So wait, when you say it is up to, I just want to be clear. Some is how many? And when you say they signed them and they wanted them, if they wish now to speak out and tell their side of the story about what it is they allege, that's now okay with you? You're releasing them on television tonight?
Senator? No.
Is that right?
Senator?
Tonight?
Senator, the company and somebody else, in this case, a man or a woman, or could be more than that, they decided when they made an agreement that they wanted to keep it quiet for everybody's interest. They signed the agreements, and that's what we're going to live with.
I'm sorry. No, the question is, are the women bound by being muzzled by you? And you could release them from that immediately, because understand, this is not just a question of the mayor's character. This is also a question about electability. We are not going to beat Donald Trump with a man who has who knows how many non-disclosure agreements and the drip, drip, drip of stories of women saying they have been harassed and discriminated against. That's not what we do as Democrats. I'd like to talk about who we're running against. A billionaire who calls women fat broads and horse-faced lesbians. And no, I'm not talking about Donald Trump. I'm talking about Mayor Bloomberg. Democrats are not going to win if we have a nominee who has a history of hiding his tax returns, of harassing women, and of supporting racist policies like redlining and stop and frisk. Look, I'll support whoever the Democratic nominee is, but understand this. Democrats take a huge risk if we just substitute one arrogant billionaire for another. This country has worked for the rich for a long time and left everyone else in the dirt. It is time to have a president who will be on the side of working families and be willing to get out there and fight for them. That is why I am in this race, and that is how I I will beat Donald Trump.
I think three things happened to Mike tonight. Number one, he just found out he'd make the debate yesterday. And you're really not sure if you're preparing because you're like, I'm not sure if I'm going to be in this debate. So Mike, even though he was, I'm sure, getting coached and prepared, he was like, I don't know if I'm going to be in this debate. And so I don't think he was coached hard enough. Number two, he was clearly instructed to keep his cool no matter what. But that ended up presenting as being lethargic and uninterested for a big chunk of the debate. And the third most telling thing is that if I'm his team, you know he's going to get a stop and frisk question, like a gender discrimination or mistreatment question. So you coach him and you have him give you 60, 75-second answers over and over again until he can do it in his sleep. And the fact that he did not have those answers at his fingertips lets me know categorically he was not properly prepared. There really is a distinction, Chris, and it's very apt because you can only be coached if you're willing to be coached. I mean, everyone who works for Bloomberg works for Bloomberg. So there's no one that could be like, hey, Mike, like, you have to, like, yeah, that was terrible. You have to do it again. We're going to videotape you and show it to you.
Did that happen with you?
Not let him. Yes, that happened to me. And then you don't let the person leave the room. And the people who are working with me worked for me too, but like they knew that I was coachable. No one on his team who could be like, that was terrible. This is going to potentially damage your campaign to a very, very high degree. And you need to not, and I know this is the case because I saw him on stage. Like if you get the obvious question and you don't pivot to this memorized script that your team has hammered into you, then you just did not get prepared or you were not willing to prepare yourself.
He did, but he wasn't ready.
I want to tell a Mike Bloomberg story because we were talking about how he hasn't had all these days in the town halls and the living rooms and whatnot. Back when he was considering running, more than 12 months ago, he actually took trial trips to New Hampshire and Iowa to see if he could relate to the people. And he concluded that it was not his thing. And then he said, hey, I'm not running. And it was only, more recently that he changed his mind on that. So he's a very smart, data-driven guy. He went and got the data. The data was not very promising at that point. And I think, unfortunately, that manifested itself tonight on the debate stage. And to me, the big mistake they made, and this is going to sound, possibly controversial, but I thought they should have advised him to skip this debate. I thought they should have just said, look, I'm not on the Nevada ballot. This is going to confuse voters. We'll see you in the next one. And then some people would have given him a hard time about it, but then he would have had a genuine runway to actually try and get, frankly, prepared to have a better night. And to me, that was the missed opportunities. They should have just said, look, like I'm going to skip.
You know who agrees with you? The campaign.
Yeah, the campaign. Right. He just put out a statement saying about Bloomberg, he was just warming up tonight. We fully expect Mike will continue to build on tonight's performance when he appears on the stage in South Carolina next Tuesday.
Oh, that's devastating.
Yeah,
I mean, usually your inbox is full of every candidate saying that they
well,
have
it does start by saying,
you're
a winner when you're drawing attacks from all the candidates.
Right.
But that's the most important
That's
part
very
of the
modest spin. Well, I thought Elizabeth Warren had a tremendous night. They announced they raised $425,000 in the first hour of the debate. But that means that she's going to raise probably $1, $2, $3, $4 million in the days after the debate. And she needs to raise 20, 30, 40 million if she's going to contend in the Super Tuesday states that have very expensive media markets. That's why Bloomberg has so much power in this race, is that he can put ads up in all these states that every other candidate is not going to be able to afford. Frankly, getting phone calls from Mike Bloomberg saying, hey, sit this one out. I got this. And if you're a donor, not donating is actually a pretty appealing pitch.
Keep your money. I'll do it. Wait, I'm sorry. Wait, can you say that again? Mike Bloomberg is calling donors saying, don't give to my opponents?
Mike Bloomberg is calling donors saying, hey, just sit this one out. I've got this. I'll bankroll the whole thing. Just don't donate to anybody.
You hear this? You know this?
Yeah. I heard this from a major donor. Say that
like your donor.
Yes. Like a donor said that. Yeah. And it's a person who donates to, a number of candidates ordinarily said that these are the phone calls that Mike.
One of the rules to a tweet from Caitlin Mitchell, Warren's chief mobilization officer. More than $1 million during the debate.
Yeah, those are really impressive sums. The question is whether she's going to get another $1 million in the hours after the debate, and then another $1 million, and then another $1 million, and then another $1 million. Because the advertising buys she would need to make in some of the big markets on Super Tuesday are really expensive, like California, Texas. I was just sharing an anecdote about how the Bloomberg campaign has just been hoovering up staff from every campaign, including mine, paying way above market rate. They're almost like like a big company that's doing roll-ups or acquisitions, but the acquisitions are actually political staff. And you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if many of the candidates on the stage tonight were losing staff to Bloomberg because he's offering 150 to 200% of what the market rate is essentially at every level.
Come back. We're going to have
stayed in.
Maybe Yang's going to get back in the race. Stay tuned for the answer to that question right after this.